Hello, hello, good to see women. Welcome to this lovely Thursday afternoon in the UK. And we have a lovely lady here today. I've already spoken to her on another group and she's got a lovely story to tell. And her name's Karen McCabe, and she's a wonderful member of our lovely community. So Karen, welcome to the Gutsy Women Collective.
Hi Dee, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So Karen, I don't know what time is it now in the US, because we've got a lot of US members around the world. So some of them might be watching live at the moment, but for the people who are watching live or on replay, tell us who you are, where you are, and what is the story behind what you do now to help people.
So yeah, my name's Karen and I live in North Staffordshire in the UK. And what I'm doing is many things right now, but my main focus is Shambhala, which is our community space that we started back uh, in March, and it opened the doors in April. So we've been open to the community for just over a month now, where we run events, talks, drop-ins, all kinds of helpful well-being services and circles and music and all kinds of events. So we're just getting going and bringing community together in many ways.
Mm-hmm. It sounds amazing. And what brought you to do that? What was it that brought you into that work?
Well, I started off as a Reiki practitioner and I trained in lots of different modalities, and going through my own personal journey of well-being and needing these services that weren't available to me at the time. I had to go seeking them for myself. And kind of what I've learned on my journey over the last 10 or 12 years is that how important our health and well-being is, and also looking at the spiritual side of ourselves, not just the practical human side. It's a balance of everything. And so what I kind of learned from that, I felt like I'd like to bring that to my community and help other people who are going through similar experiences who need that support. So yeah, they weren't available for me on my doorstep. So I felt to help my community by co-creating these, because I feel like we live in such a busy world. There are a lot of issues for a lot of people going on right now, and they need this kind of space where they can have peace and solitude, but also welcomed by people who've got lived experience, who can offer an ear and just allow them to kind of offload if they want to, and point them to whatever they need. So we try and bring things to people, and if we can't provide them, we're reaching out to our community and pointing them to other practitioners and other services. So it's about working together in our communities in that unity.
Yes. So you will have your own story around your own health and your own natural healing journey. So where did that start for you?
So I've been quite it started probably when I was a child, very anxious child, internalized a lot of things. So kind of stored it all down, and you get to a certain point in your life, you try and manage it. So I was experiencing depression, severe anxiety, most of my life, didn't kind of realize it, just managed to get through each day, and each experience. But, there'd be that internal dialogue, that chatter going on all the time, the story of, not being good enough. And so I felt, I was kind of got to the point where I was on my knees with this and got burnout in a lot of my work. And that was when I started to go through what I would call a breakdown. But it was my breakthrough, really. And I couldn't see that at the time. So what I was seeking was more purpose and more freedom in my life, really. That was the bottom line, and to try and unravel these conditions and beliefs that I had about myself. So I went on a path of seeking, and it started with Reiki and counseling and all kinds of things. And I found them very beneficial for me. And what helped me kind of going through these experiences, I've got a lot of awareness because I spent a good few years exploring lots of different modalities, seeking through spiritual teachings, direct experience, and I went off traveling. My whole life kind of after about 7 years ago kind of crumbled, and I got on an aeroplane and went traveling, and it was the most expansive experience I had in my life, because it opened me up to how the world really is and how we can live in a more conscious way and holistically and ethically. So it's like I've been collecting all this information and gathering and making contacts, and now is a time to bring it all together through different vehicles, and Shambhala is one of them. I'm also involved with a project called The Way, which has been going on for about 5 years, and One Small Town, which is another project that's close to my heart. So yeah, I've got my fingers in lots of different things that are involving community, and I'm very engaged with my local community and bringing people together in a conscious way. It's time for change.
Yeah, I think the world is ready for change, and a lot of breaking down has to. You touched on that before in your own personal journey, which was there was a breakdown to a breakthrough, and I think the world
Yeah,
is going through that currently, isn't it? You know, there's a
yeah,
breakdown happening in societies and globally. There's this breakdown of things that we were led to believe we needed and relied on, and yet
yeah,
we're actually now breaking through the lie of that and coming through
yeah,
into a new space,
yeah,
which
absolutely.
which can look really messy, but
Yeah.
actually, yeah.
It's like the cocoon and the butterfly is about to emerge, but you can't rush it. You have to allow it to happen in its own time, and I think from what I'm seeing, the last 5 years in particular, we're still going through that kind of echo from what happened in 2020, when the whole world kind of shut down and we were very isolated and separated, and things changed overnight, and we're still feeling the effects of that. And going back to kind of my story, I used to suppress a lot of things and internalize them, and not realize that they're in my subconscious. But I feel like what tends to happen, this builds up, and if we don't look at it and deal with it, then it's stored up, and eventually it has to come out somewhere. We have to do the inner work, and the things are getting a bit louder. So what I'm seeing is more people are starting to question things and seek answers and need people to listen to them about what's going on for them. So that's kind of what we're doing with a lot of these spaces, but also empowering ourselves with knowledge about how we can be change makers in the world through leading with our hearts, as part of a community and coming together. And that interconnectedness is so important, that we come together no matter what our beliefs are about things. We've all got a common ground, and that's that we are all human, and we are one humanity, and we have to discard all these ideas of separateness, our cultures and our beliefs, our religions, and and the only way that we can do that is coming together in unity, really, and it is starting to happen.
Yes, I think it. I'm seeing glimmers of it here and there, and then all of a sudden I see another glaring light being shone on where the division is happening, and
Yeah,
I think it's designed that way, but more and more people are actually now pushing that light away and going, that's too bright, you're shining that light in the wrong place, kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah. And I want to go back to what you touched on when you said when we suppress things, and there's been a lot of suppression within the world lately, but going back to our personal experiences of suppressing our emotions and our thoughts and our beliefs about things, and not being aware of what we're doing, the body then starts to tell us
yes,
what needs to be done. And you touched very much as well on the spiritual side, and again, that's another element of the changes that I'm seeing around. More people are becoming now more connected to that spiritual side, whether it's traditional formal religion, or whether it's just connecting to a higher level of awareness and consciousness.
Yeah.
And when we're healing from something, I think that's the part out of like the mind, the emotions, the physicality, the spirituality, the spirit is the bit that kind of gets left behind
Yes,
somewhat.
I agree. We tend to become very immersed in the story of what's happening in the world, and we forget, we get so immersed in this human experience that we forget that we are part of this whole consciousness that is a super consciousness that we have all got access to. It's just our consciousness gets contracted because we go into fear, and we go into these programs of lack, and we don't believe in ourselves, and we give our power outside of ourselves. And we forget that all this that is playing out is a projection of every single one of us adding to that story. And we can change that story by changing our thoughts and what we focus on. And
Mm.
if we focus on a world that we all want to create, that is for the highest good of everyone, where um, there's no poverty, there's no lack, everybody is abundant, has enough, they have the resources that they need to thrive, then we can all co-create that. It's the fact that we get distracted, and yes, the world gets busy, and yes, we've got things to do, we've got families, we've got distractions, but it's so important for us to take that pause and breathe, just to be still and tune into our bodies, tune into our hearts, and just drop that mind of the chatter, be in nature, just observe the beauty around us. And it's just tweaking that dial, and it's developing them neural pathways in the brain so that we start to program our minds. It becomes a natural state of being. It becomes so natural that we start to see the beauty everywhere. And yeah, we're aware of the suffering, but we don't become immersed in that story, and we don't become part of it. We can be
Mm.
separate from it and watch it play out, but we can still be compassionate and supportive, and giving of our energy and our love and our time. But it doesn't deplete us in the
Mm.
same way that if we are immersed amongst it
Mm.
through our thoughts, through our emotions, through our psychological programs. So um, it's so important for us to just be in stillness, and whether that's formal meditation or mindfulness or just doing something that you love. It might be playing the drums, that take you
Mm.
into that trance state, or focusing on something creative. Then it just changes the mind,
Mm.
just calms the mind, and we can tune in, and we realize that we're more than this physical reality.
Yes, yes. And the thing that came to me when you were speaking was how the you were speaking more in like the general terms of not getting caught up in everything that's going on outside. However, we get caught up in all the other internal stuff that's going on inside in our own little microcosm of our lives, don't we? If we've got discord in our relationships, whether that's a work relationship, a parental relationship, an intimate relationship with our partner, or with our children, or with friends, we can get caught up in that same kind of struggle, but in a more tightly held way, if you know what I mean, because it's really apparent to us, it's really in our faces sometimes, and that can be quite difficult to actually
Yeah,
get out of that space.
It's going into that neutrality, which is difficult, kind of realizing that we are not our thoughts, and whatever's playing out is a reflection to look at what's arising within, what story is playing out, and how are we perceiving reality, because we each perceive it in a unique way. We don't all see it the same from our perspectives. So it's breaking that down, catching ourselves when the mind comes in, and that's what creates anxiety most of the time. This is kind of what I learned on my journey, is either I projected too far into the future and catastrophized and worried about things and trying to predict things and control things, and realizing that there is nothing to control. All that this here is the present moment, and you can't change the past either. The thoughts that come up about past experiences or something that's just recently happened, often we can berate ourselves or feel embarrassed or guilt or shame. These programs come up, and it might not feel like it at the time, but it is actually a gift in the sense that it helps us to see that these things aren't true, they're just thoughts. If we can catch those thoughts and just observe them and try and go into where it's coming from. Why's that appeared in my story? What does it say about why I'm responding in that way? Can I take a pause and breathe and respond rather than react from the same program? When we break those cycles and we see the change that happens, those responses disintegrate and we change the way that we behave. And that's what I feel like life is all about. It's discarding rather than adding to. It's like the dropping away and to reveal the true self, rather than we have to find something to bring into ourselves to change things. And I think that's where the misunderstanding happens. People are looking for something outside of themselves when really, as they say, it's an inside job. It's about looking within.
Yeah, it is. It's very much looking within. And I sometimes have this sadness around why wasn't I taught this when I was younger, when I could actually have used it in my younger years to have had an easier time of life with my health, with my own mind and body connection to my pain symptoms and all of those kinds of things. It's kind of like I've got to an age now where it's kind of like, well, I've got less time left on this planet than I've had, and I just wished I'd had all that information before then. Yeah,
I'm the same. If you could put an old head on young shoulders, as they say, and I could have lived a different life. But when I look back and I just acknowledge that everything happened perfectly at the right time. It couldn't really be any different. And yeah, it's like when you have that wisdom, I think, if young people could have the wisdom of what I can see now, if they could have it in their 20s or even younger, they started out life like that, imagine what the world would be like.
I know it would be, yeah, it would be phenomenal, wouldn't it? And we actually need some of that stuff as a contrast to the good stuff, because we can't discern unless we've got something to compare one side against the other. So it's really important, and that's where community comes in. And your communities now, I've built this community, I'm building this community of women who have chronic health conditions and lots of other thoughts around their health and around life that's contributing to their experiences. And you're building a community around bringing people together, no matter what their faith, culture, everything. It's just all about bringing communities back together again. So tell us a little bit more about how that fits in now with all of the things that you've actually been doing in your life.
Oh, I think you froze a little bit then. I don't know if you can hear me. The screen's frozen, or my screen's frozen. There we go.
We're back again. We're back again.
It's okay. So yeah, how does that all fit into my world? Everything that I do right now revolves around community, and people used to call it networking. I think that's an old term now, because it's about connecting with people and finding out what they're doing. And this is why it's so amazing what you're doing, and with Bump, and how we are connecting, not just locally but globally, because we're all able to assist each other to co-create. And the more of us that do this in our everyday interactions, it can be as simple as just going into a shop you've never been into before, and having a conversation, and suddenly you get to know that person who's operating that business, and finding out about what it is. It's like the questions you ask when I come on: who are you, where you from, and what is it you do? It's as simple
Yes.
as that. And then you find some common ground, how it fits in, and who's heart led, and who's what their focus is. And then it's about connecting people. We're all connectors, we all interact with people on a daily basis, and if there's something that we all need, we can usually find somebody who can offer it. So, and we connect people together. It's our kind of generic nature, I think, as individuals. We all want to help each other in what way we can, and find things for each other. um so yeah, it's I find through some of the things I love to connect with people through is music, dance, food, culture sharing. um and that's as simple as it gets. Socializing, so we have that connection with fun. um but also from that, when we have conversations around food and coming together in those spaces, we share ideas, we talk very deeply about what matters to us, and it becomes quite intimate. We start to reveal things about ourselves because we feel safe to do so, because we're around like-minded people. And when we feel safe to share, we're living in our authenticity. And then in those authentic sharings, we can feel safe to collaborate, because we know where people are, where their intentions are coming from. When they're coming from their heart, and you're around authentic people, the trust and the bonds are created. And that's the foundations for me. Once you know you have a group of people you can rely upon, you can trust wholeheartedly, who are living in their authenticity, who want to give time, energy, and even money, to each other, to help each other to grow, and to work together, and to collaborate with no agenda. That's when you have true community. And that's the ethos that I'm involved in with a few different projects, because I'm here and I want to support my community. Suffering is outside of us. And what we can often do is empathize, and we can feel that emotion that the other person we perceive might be going through. And that often can lead us to feel depleted as facilitators and practitioners if we're not careful. So what Buddhism taught me, and my ongoing journey, is remembering that everything is outside of me. I'm here, I'm having my personal experience, and it's only my thoughts that creates the feeling. So if I start to empathize and go into that story with someone and forget I'm separate, I'm having this experience, but I have this interaction. When I go into that forgetfulness, and go into the story, I take on that emotion. I create those emotions unnecessarily. So the trick, to kind of the practice to develop, is to be able to observe, to hold space, to not get in, into those emotions and thoughts, but be a good listener, and be able to offer what you can of service, or point people to what they need, and provide that service for them. And it's not an easy thing to do. It is something that takes time and wisdom and experience,
Mm.
because it can seem very traumatic in the world. And I know I had a bit of an outburst last week because of certain things that are going on in the world that are horrific. And I feel I'd like to be able to change that. And I can't change it myself. I don't have the power to change it. But what I realized is there are things I can do in my locality, within my community, by how I spend my money, what I spend it on, who I give it to, what I give my time and energy to, and empowering people who are trying to get that message out, trying to show what's happening and how we can provide solutions. So it's not focusing on the problem, it's being aware of what's happening, but providing the solutions that's so important.
Mm. 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 Yes, that's something to think about. I'll
Mhm.
go away and think about that, because I'm very similar in the fact that I see something that's going on, and that I was quite listening to you and thinking, is that empathy you're talking about? This kind of, you hear somebody's story and not get involved in it, and yet we empathize when we hear someone's story of sadness or trauma, because we can put ourselves in their shoes, and
Yeah,
we can see how we would feel if that was the case. And that's when that emotion comes up, because we can actually empathize with somebody. And how far do we actually allow that empathy to take over, so that we're no longer useful in that
yes,
situation to somebody? Yeah.
yeah. It's no good being a bag of emotions and not getting anything done, but sometimes we have to go through that process and
Yeah.
allow that, because with that fuel
Mm.
afterwards we can reflect and we think, okay, that can be very empowering,
Mm.
and we can use that energy to channel and focus into something we can do,
Mm.
and that's when we start seeking even more solutions.
Yeah. And being that bag of emotion, I'm so guilty of that, because I just get so empathic about
Yeah,
people's feelings, and and that is one of the things that I really have to work on, is not to allow that to overwhelm me.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's welcome, but it's that overwhelm, isn't it,
Yeah.
where you can't kind of push through that and move forward. It's like when we sometimes can get stuck in that process and focus on the events that are happening and keep watching, and then not actually taking any action that we can take.
Mm.
Um, and it can distract us and it can consume us, that we feel like the world is hopeless and that it's imploding or whatever. We can start to catastrophize, and I think it is a process we do go through as a stage. But I think once we find that balance, because it is important to be able to empathize and not be detached, and often it can be the fuel that's the catalyst, because
Mm.
that anger and frustration arises. It's like, right, okay, I'm going to go and do this now. I'm going to counteract that. I'm going to go and find the people who can help me to get the message out. And we start to find that fire, and that fire can be so powerful.
Mm.
It's like this rage, like a volcano that can come through. That's like a catalyst.
Mhm.
So
That's
there's
that's
no
the
good or bad.
that's the righteous anger, isn't it? That's where
Yes,
anger, a lot of people I speak to in my work, is all around emotions that they hold in, and they're holding it in, and it's attacking their body physically.
that's the
It's getting
problem.
stuck in there. And I always say to people, anger is there for a reason. It's how we actually use it as the tool to move us forward. And there's nothing wrong with righteous anger. It's a God-given thing. It's an emotion. Emotions were given to us for a reason, to use
Mm.
them in the right way. And so
Yeah,
anger, when it's a righteous anger, it can be that catalyst, like you say, to actually move forward. And if that's in a relationship, whether it's at work, if you feel like you're being bullied at work, or you feel like you're being manipulated, or you feel like there's a lot of unfairness in your life at the moment, or you're feeling, don't hold it in and have it affect your body, but actually allow it to come out in a way that is useful for you,
yeah.
and to stop the situation and to create a better situation.
I think like the chemicals that are released into our body when we go into these thought processes that create these emotions can be so harmful. Obviously, things like adrenaline, cortisol, and it puts us in this hyper alert, this fight or flight state. And if we're not careful, we can be in that for such a long time that our bodies are getting burnt out, and adrenaline fatigue, chronic fatigue. It affects our gut health, it affects our mental well-being, And I think from my experience, that's what happened with me with the depression and anxiety. I was in a heightened state all the time. Like I was on edge, waiting for something to happen, and hyper alert, hyper vigilant, trying to work out people's body languages, trying to work out what people might be thinking, even though they weren't thinking anything, and creating that story in my own mind. And it's only when, obviously, sometimes we have to go through different therapies, different modalities to break it down and see the pattern, see what's happening. And I think I must have tried pretty much every modality going that I'm aware of anyway. If anybody comes and say, "Oh yeah, I've tried that," and there's value in everything, I really do find that. Um, but it's a holistic approach as well. But when the body starts to calm down and it goes into homeostasis and that anxiety ceases, it's funny because I didn't notice anxiety had left me. I'd lived with it my whole life, and I used to wake up with that feeling as soon as I opened my eyes, that sense of dread and my stomach flipping and feeling anxious. And then, well, I think it was a few years ago, and I hadn't realised it had left me. And one day I woke up and I thought, my goodness, anxiety's gone. There's no anxiety. And it has come to visit me a couple of times, but nowhere near where it used to be, and not as often, to the point now where it's very rare it comes in. So the body is finding its own balance. It's not stuck in that fight or flight. It's gradually come back to realizing that's my normal point. It's not that. It's not stuck there. And it's been a holistic approach with food, with water, with what I watch, with what I interact with, the people I surround myself with, the modalities. The whole of life affects us all, and it's our choices, what we choose to engage with, how we interact with the world, what we consume. Everything's energy, and it all affects us. But what it's made me do is to look for the solutions and to seek in that way rather than look at the problems. So it's changed that mindset, and I can see potentials and opportunities. So I'd just like to share one example, if that's okay.
Go ahead,
So
yeah.
I don't want to get political or anything because I don't want to bring that into the platform, but my focus is peace in the world. I want to be an instrument of peace as much as possible, but I'm aware that we live in a dualistic world, so there is war and there's disharmony, discord. So Shambhala was created as a place of peace, but also there is a humanitarian element for me, and I'm very aware of people of injustice in the world, and shining a light on it in a gentle way, but looking at how we can bring peace. And it starts with us, each one of us. If we find peace within ourselves, we're adding to the collective consciousness of peace. And so each one of us choosing to be peace. Every time anger arises or somebody does something that would normally affect us and bring up anger, just pausing and just looking at the situation before responding and coming at it from a conscious point of view. We can use our words in a gentle way, but get our message across that something is unacceptable. We don't have to battle or get angry with people. We can consciously and clearly communicate that something isn't right. And then we can look at ways of how we can change that. So, one of the things I want to do, and I've just put some feelers out there, is to run a peace event at Shambhala where we bring things in about peace, how we can be peace in the world, and how we can help people in war-torn countries who might not have access to certain things, basic needs, and we can support communities in these areas and talk about what is happening, but also how we can assist in a humanitarian way to provide assistance from where we're at. And I think, we it's easy to turn away from people in suffering and in war and think that we cannot do anything. But there are small actions we can do. We can write to our politicians. We can voice our concerns about things. It's not attacking these politicians. It's not attacking anyone. It's it's just using our voice. We can also look at buying produce for certain places in the world that might help. We can stop spending our money in certain places that might fund things that harm people. So it's a conscious way of living. We have a lot of power by our actions, our money, our time, and how we interact with the world. So we can all be change makers in the most simplest of ways, but it takes each one of us to live in that more conscious, authentic way. And once you do drop all those thoughts and you're living from that higher place, that higher consciousness, it isn't a choice, it's a state of being. It becomes integrated as a human experience. And that's how we are all meant to live in community, in my opinion, and from my perspective. Because I'm seeing it all around me, the people I interact with, they do the same, that it's not coming from their identity or what they can get or from programmed responses. It's about being heart-led, living from that soul purpose of, that soul essence that we all are, that unconditional love.
I think it's amazing. Yeah, that's exactly how it is. And we just work towards that from every aspect of our lives. So yeah,
It all starts with us.
It does. It all
Doing our
starts with us.
shadow work.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. Doing all of that and keeping that as part. It's a little bit like, you get up in the morning and you don't forget to breathe, do you? So we've just got to do the same thing. Thank you, Karen, for your time today. This has been amazing. And yeah, really some deep subject. It's some deep work in there that many people are yearning to do something like this, and they're looking at ways in which their lives can improve, and maybe not even thinking that this might be the way forward for them, because we can all be guilty of just being focused in on ourselves instead of how we can actually spread a bit more of that love and that peace and that joy around other people. And when we start to do that, we start to feel it ourselves, and our lives somehow like a miracle changes. So thank you so much for that insight.
Thank you. It's the feedback loop, isn't it?
It is.
And it's okay also if you're not in that place where you can give because you don't have the energy. That's okay as well, because what you're doing is you're working through a process. And if that's taking all your energy right now, that's absolutely fine as well, because once you work through that, those little glimpses will appear and you'll start to put yourself out there a little bit more and give what you can, and that will feel better. And then that response will get even more, and it grows and snowballs. So
it does. Yes, we can only give from the overflow. We've got to make sure we're full first, and then the overflow is what you give from, and that's the best place to start. Karen, it's been an absolute joy and pleasure once again, and I'm sure that the people who've been watching live or on replay will get something so much from what we've been talking about today. So please contact Karen in the group, have a chat with her, ask a question, connect, comment, all the things, and we will see you again, Karen, on another live in sometime in the future, and we'll have an update on how Shambhala's going and the One Small Town and the community work and all of that kind of thing. So thank you again.
Thank you, dear. I look forward to it, and thank you for adding me to your community. It's great to be a part of it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'll just end the live stream and then we'll have a little chat. Thank you.